Hello and welcome to all the action from round 29 of the Eredivisie season. We start in Tilburg, where Ajax were looking to go to the top of the table, playing a day before PSV and trailing the champions by 2 points before kick-off against an informed Willem II side who'd won 4 in a row in the Eredivisie for the first time in over 18 years. The Tricolores certainly started full of confidence and were first to threaten through Vangelis Pavlidis. Despite the impressive run of Adri Costa's men, Ajax still started firm favourites against opponents they'd beaten in 15 of their previous 17 league meetings, losing only once. But with a Champions League quarter-final to come against Juventus in the week, Ajax had to guard against minds wandering, particularly with the title race so tight. They survived an early scare on Saturday when Andre Onana made a mess of dealing with Alexander Isak's effort. The Concord were grateful that Marius Vrusai couldn't react in time to what really should have been a tap-in. Even at this stage, Willem II probably feared it was a chance they had needed to take. Before the first leg of their previous Champions League tie against Real Madrid, Ajax had suffered a surprise domestic defeat, 1-0 at Heracles, and coach Erik ten Hag admitted that had been on their minds in the dressing room before this game. Determined to avoid a repeat, they soon slipped into their stride. Frankie de Jong, facing his former club, who he scored against back in November, was integral in the build-up to the opening goal inside the first quarter of an hour. He combined with Dusan Tadic to tee up Donny van der Beek, who made the breakthrough, just as he had in the midweek win at Emmen. This was his 8th Eredivisie goal of the season, and having ridden their luck at the other end, Ajax were up and running with a wonderfully crafted opener. These sides will also meet again on the 5th of May in the Dutch Cup final, and Willem II were determined to show they wouldn't be overawed by their illustrious opponents. Ajax, though, had gone 7 league games without keeping a clean sheet away from home, and it took the Tilburgers just 10 minutes to fashion the opportunity of an equaliser. Fernando Lewis found Vrusai, who went down under the challenge of Daley Blind, and referee Danny McKaylee pointed to the penalty spot. Ajax felt it was soft and that Blind got the ball first, but were just as frustrated with themselves at the concession so soon after going in front. Swedish teenager Isak had scored a hat-trick of penalties in the recent win over Fortuna Sittard, so there was only ever one man who was going to take that. He coolly sent Onana the wrong way to make it 11 goals in 11 appearances since his January loan move from Borussia Dortmund. One of the form players in the league right now, 6 of those goals coming in his last 3 games. He's now being linked with Chelsea. Home hopes were high at this stage, with Willem II having scored at least 3 goals in each of their last 4 Eredivisie games for the first time since 1959. They'd never managed to do that 5 times in a row in their history, and although few thought that likely against Ajax, there was still the belief they could go on to complete an early turnaround. Isak spoke afterwards of how he relished his duel against fellow 19-year-old Matthijs de Ligt in the visitors' defence, which was showcased here. Ten Hag spoke after the game of the spirit in his side. How for a Dutch club to be fighting on 3 fronts in April shows they've become a great team, and they soon began to impose themselves again. That was no mean feat given the confidence Willem II were playing with, according to Ten Hag, who was full of compliments for the home side. He brought Hakim Ziyech back into the starting lineup after a midweek rest in place of Klaas-Jan Huntelaar. And it was Ziyech who almost teed up Dusan Tadic to put them back in front. And with the team in Vellenreuter to make an important save. The Moroccan international couldn't quite capitalise on the rebound. The pressure was rewarded going into the final 5 minutes of the first half, though, as Ajax went back in front, albeit thanks to a slice of fortune. Gavin Neres combined effectively with Tadic down the left, and it was the Brazilian who provided the cross, from which Frank Herkens scored an own goal. The defender couldn't get his feet sorted out in time and was left red-faced as he diverted the ball past Vellenreuter. Neres just managing to stay onside in the build-up. Ajax by now were hitting their stride and didn't want the first half to finish. Tadic, with 20 league goals to his name so far this season, was proving the provider-in-chief this time. He was too strong and sharp for Lewis, leaving the fullback on the floor, and Van der Beek was only a fraction away from scoring his second goal of the game, rattling the crossbar in the last minute of the half with the keeper beaten. And there was still time for another Ajax opportunity in added time before the break, with Willem II wanting the whistle. In fact, they felt referee Michele should have blown for a foul by de Jong, but the official saw nothing wrong with that robust challenge as he went on to combine with Ziyech in threatening a third. The shot was blocked by Herkens, only the hint of a handball shout, which Ajax didn't really even appeal for anyway, as the defender attempted to avoid further mishap at the end of the half. The second period was only 8 minutes old when Ajax did extend their advantage. A brilliant ball from Tadic located the run of Joel Veltman, who marked his first Eredivisie start of the season, but his first goal in the competition since September of 2017, as he deputised in style for the suspended Nusayr Mezraoui. Only recently restored to fitness after a long-term knee injury, the fullback profited from a well-timed run into space and a smart finish. Ajax were by now turning on the style, although their next chance came from a Wellenreuter slip when attempting a clearance. Neres played in Ziyech, and the German goalkeeper was grateful that the crossbar came to his rescue for the second time in the game, having been beaten by that powerful effort. This was the chance to put the pressure back on PSV in the title race and move a point clear at the top for the best part of 24 hours at least. But Willem II weren't finished yet, determined to underline their attacking threat that has been so effective of late. That's mainly been down to their VIP front three of Rusai, Isak and Pavlidis, who were all prominent in that counter-attack. Costa wasn't critical of his side afterwards as they continued to try and force a way back into the game, claiming they were simply up against players of greater quality. Nor was he concerned this meeting would have any bearing on next month's cup final between them. His team could have been back within touching distance had anybody been able to get a definitive touch to Diego Palacios' cross, Rusai the closest to turning it home. Though on reflection he will probably feel he should have done so. Instead, Ajax had the final say in the scoring with a landmark goal that underlined their outstanding attacking qualities this season. Tadic again was heavily involved, claiming another assist as he combined with Nicolas Tagliafico and David Neres in the build-up. Ziyech then provided the thumping finish he'd been threatening to score what was Ajax's 100th goal in the Eredivisie already this season. They became the first team since PSV back in 1988 to bring out the century before the 30th matchday of the season. It was a late scare for Ajax, not in terms of the score, but when de Jong was substituted late in the game. This wasn't quite as straightforward as saving a star man for the Champions League tie, because the Barcelona-bound midfielder admitted after the game he'd suffered an ankle injury. He received a wonderful reception, though, back at the club where it all started for him in the Willem II Academy, and in front of some very familiar faces in the stands. It was an important hurdle overcome on the field as Ajax saw out a comfortable 4-1 win to again reach the summit of the Eredivisie in style. Willem II's winning run is ended, but there's plenty more for Ajax to aim for before the sides reconvene in the cup final. North we go next to Groningen, who went in search of a 7th straight home league win. They encountered opponents in Excelsior, who'd been through the most turbulent of weeks, with André Poldervaart resigning as coach in the wake of a midweek defeat at home to bottom club NAC Breda. With his former assistant André Hoekstra taking charge of the team, the visitors from Rotterdam were the first to threaten, although not to the extent Andy Massaoud would have hoped here. That was to prove a rare sight of goal in a largely uneventful first half. The game did open up after the break. Again, the chance here was for Massaoud, for an Excelsior side attempting to avoid a 6th straight Eredivisie defeat. Sergio Pat made the save before the flag went up. The pattern continued in the early stages of the second half, Excelsior creating the better chances and missing them. Jürgen Matai does have a couple of goals from centre-back this season and should perhaps have had another after being well picked out by the former Groningen fullback Lorenzo Burnett. A glaring miss. Welcome to management for Hoekstra, a long-serving member of the backroom staff who called his interim appointment the most special day of his career. They hadn't scored for 5 games before Munir El Hamdawi's effort against NAC on Wednesday, and it was he who had their next chance to go ahead in this one. Again, though, there was a lack of confidence or conviction in the finish, and no way past Pat. Groningen boss Danny Boust had seen enough and made a double change just before the hour. Django Vormadam replaced Ludovic Rice. And with Mohamed Al-Hankouri also withdrawn, on as well came Paul Gladen, who scored the match winner off the bench against another of the relegation battlers, de Graafschap, in the week. The change seemed to work well in shifting the momentum of the match. Groningen began to carry more of a threat, and starman Ritsu Doan continued his search for a first club goal of the calendar year. The Japanese international was only a whisker away. Because of the tight turnaround and unexpected resignation of Paul de Waard, Hoekstra stressed he'd had little time to prepare for his big night. But having given as good as they were getting for much of the match, his side were dealt a big blow to their survival hopes 20 minutes from time. Amir Absalom provided the service, but Gladen still had plenty to do before making the breakthrough in stylish fashion. This was his 9th substitute appearance in signing from Wolves, and after successive game-winning goals off the bench, he must now be pushing for a first start soon. It left Groningen on course for a third successive 1-0 home win, but they still had to survive a few scares to see it through. Excelsior's own substitute Dennis Eckert had only just come on when he narrowly failed to turn in a cross from Siba Horemans. The club want a quick appointment, at least until the end of the season, having slipped to second bottom after this defeat and 8th in their last 11 Eredivisie visits to Groningen. Geoffrey Fortes was next to go close, but not close enough with just over a minute of the 90 remaining. Instead, they might have even lost by more in added time, with Doan continuing to look the most menacing. He's reportedly wanted by Ajax and PSV next season, as well as by a host of other European clubs, and was left claiming for a penalty, believing that Robin van der Meer had handled the ball. But yet again, 1 goal was enough at home to earn Groningen all 3 points. Their best run of form here since 2010 continues. And having been involved in the relegation battle themselves in the first half of the season, the pride of the North are now charging towards a Europa League playoff place. A future a lot less certain for Excelsior right now, whoever's at the helm from here. In form, Utrecht arrived in coach Dick Advocaat's home city of The Hague on Saturday, attempting to record a club record 5th successive away win in the Eredivisie. Opponents Ardo were on a run of 6 games without a victory, and the threat of relegation still not dispelled. So what followed saw the form book turned on its head. Ardo, who'd managed the fewest efforts on goal of any club in the league over the last 10 games, went on the attack from the start, and in front with just 11 minutes played. When Nasser El Khayati's effort was blocked, Lex Immers was there to profit, slamming home his 5th goal of the campaign. Immers has gone on record as promising the club's fans they won't go down after recently signing a new 3-year contract extension with his local side. This was some way to start delivering on that declaration. Free-scoring Utrecht had racked up 15 goals in their last 3 away matches, including 6 at VVV on Wednesday, so they were unlikely to be too concerned just yet at falling behind. Sander van der Streek was amongst the midweek scorers, but failed to beat Robert Zwinkels here, with teammate Johanno Kirk well placed in support. Kirk was next to have a go, his impressive pace putting him in a promising position, but it wasn't quite matched by the finish. And so it went on. Kirk and Sean Kleiber combined down the right, but before the flying fullback could cut the ball back for a tap-in, the offside flag had gone up against him. And this one was never going to count. Instead, with 10 minutes of the half remaining, Ardo doubled their lead, thanks to captain Aaron Myers, whose only previous goal this season had come in a 5-1 defeat at Ajax back in December. Taking the ball from Geraldo Becker, he converted, courtesy as well of a slight deflection off Timo Letchert. Agony for Advocaat, back at the club where he made his debut as a player in 1967. And it would only get worse. Immediately, in fact, Utrecht surrendered possession straight from the kick-off, but direct run from Becker did much of the damage, playing in El Kayati, who in turn teed up Danny Bakker to make it 3-0. His first Eredivisie goal of the season came amidst a sense of shock, it seemed. Coach Fons Groenendijk appeared a little stunned himself over just how easy his team were making it look as they took a big stride towards safety. Even the most optimistic expectations being exceeded at this juncture. Lecce didn't reappear for Utrecht in the second half, with Advocat later confirming he'd taken disciplinary action against the defender. There's something said in the dressing room at the interval. The coach claimed his side simply froze on what was rapidly becoming a major off night. Little changed in that respect in the second half. And fast feet from top scorer El Kayati created another side of goal. This one kept out by David Jensen. Richard Bazour had scored twice for Utrecht in that thumping win at VVV last time out, and was attempting to provide the goal threat again. Frustration only grew further when the on-loan Wolfsburg man saw his effort deflected and was denied even the corner by referee Allard Lindhout. He appeared to merit. Advocat had won 9 of his 11 Eredivisie games as a coach against Ardo, a side that he insists remain close to his heart. His best win percentage against any opposition he's faced in the competition. But this latest return was rapidly proving one to forget, and the punishment kept coming. A fourth followed for Ardo in the closing stages, brilliantly created by the outstanding El Kayati, before Thomas Nesid became the beneficiary. The Czech striker got his foot to it first to score his 6th goal of the Eredivisie season, sparking real scenes of celebration at the Karstien Stadion. Utrecht just couldn't get the ball off El Kayati, who again turned provider in style. And in the last minute of the 90, it was left to the man who started the scoring to have the final say. A second of the game for Immers to make it 5-0. Again, Nesid was involved, heading down the corner and inviting Immers to complete his second brace in successive home games. Following on from the 3-3 draw here with Vitesse last weekend. He'd only scored twice all season before that. This one completed Ardo's biggest Eredivisie win since 1990. It was the last action of a remarkable evening. Ardo found their goal-scoring touch in devastating style, with Immers saying one more win is all they'll now need to make sure they stay up. Their next 2 games are away at RZ and PSV, whilst they still have to go to Feyenoord as well, emphasising the importance of this. As one son of the city suffered on his return to The Hague, another led the celebrations. Immers the flag-bearer on a day and a display to remember for Ardo. The game between De Graafschap and RZ had implications at both ends of the table. The home side trying to escape the bottom 3, and RZ attempting to remain in the top 3. The visitors were the form team in the league in 2019, 26 points in 11 games being more than any other side. And they had an early look at goal through Osama Idrissi. Goalkeeper Nigel Bertram's denied him on that occasion and was at it again to thwart the next attack as well. Idrissi combined this time with Calvin Stengs before Bertram's smothered the danger. De Graafschap came into the match on the back of successive defeats and had lost 3 of their previous 4, but remained very much in touch with their relegation rivals. The urgency in their camp was emphasised by Ajax loanee Azor Matasiwa, who showed real desire both to win the ball and fashion a sight of goal for himself. His wait for a first senior strike goes on, though, after the finish that followed. De Graafschap were growing into the game the longer the first half went on, and won a free kick in dangerous territory when Frederick Mitchell clumsily brought down Javier Vet. Youssef El Jebli looked favourite to strike it, but stepped aside for Leroy Owusu, whose ambitious effort did at least extend Marco Bizot in the RZ goal. This was a third game in 8 days for both clubs, and AZ had been forced into a change at left-back with Thomas Uyen suspended. That meant Owen Vindal came in to start his first league game of the season, and he was joining in with the attack as the first half finished, setting up fellow fullback Jonas Svensson for arguably AZ's best opening of the first 45. They only took 7 minutes of the second half, though, to step things up and go in front, with a goal that was made to look so straightforward. A well-weighted ball reached Matt Sunchens, who in turn picked out captain Gus Thiel to slot home the finish and continue his impressive form in front of goal. This was Thiel's 11th of the Eredivisie season and a 7th in 9. The composure shown in converting it, suggesting why his ratio has improved rapidly recently. AZ were now in charge and looking comfortable as they tried to put further daylight between themselves and fourth-placed Feyenoord, who played a day later. Just 1 point between the clubs going into week 30. Stengs, another of the 4 men in Alkmaar right now, was next to go close. Tester for Bertrams before his defence eventually scrambled away the remaining danger. The highly rated Stengs only returned in November after over a year out of the game with a serious knee injury. So there was obvious concern in the AZ ranks when he went down here late in the match. He seemed to overstretch when challenging Jordi Tutuarima and crumpled awkwardly. After lengthy treatment, a change was required, with Ricardo van Rijn summoned to try and help his side over the line for the final 5 minutes. The sight of Stengs walking off the field was rather more promising, though. AZ coach John van den Brom insisted De Graafschap had little to no chances in the game, so declared he was left feeling sick by what happened at the end, both the manner and the timing of the equaliser in the first minute of added time. It looked a speculative effort at best by De Graafschap substitute Daryl van Meer before the ball bounced in off post and goalkeeper. An own goal, this one from Marco Bizot. He's been something of a standout performer for his side this season. Bizot playing his way into the Dutch national squad under Ronald Koeman. But this was a horrible moment for him. It's one the keeper claimed he could have done little about, putting it down as a 1 in 1,000 freak. His coach disagreed, with Van den Brom explaining later he felt Bizot should still have saved it, and that this was 2 points lost unnecessarily. It didn't prove enough time for AZ to respond, and they've now gone winless in 4 Eredivisie away games for the first time under Van den Brom. But for Henk de Jong and De Graafschap, this could yet prove a precious point, enough to take them up a place in the table above Excelsior now on goal difference, with PSV away next for them. Saturday's final game came from Almelo, where Heracles were hoping to strengthen their push for a European playoff place at home to bottom club NAC Breda. Indeed, a home win here would take Frank Vermoet's men within a point of 5th-placed Utrecht. But with NAC having claimed 4 points from Ruud Brood's first 2 matches in charge, they'd offered renewed hope of beating the drop. It was Heracles applying all the early pressure. The save required by goalkeeper Benjamin van Leer was actually from his own defender. NAC were looking to build on their midweek win at fellow strugglers Excelsior, which had ended a run of 5 straight away defeats. They'd not managed successive victories on their Eredivisie travel since May 2010, but confidence in the camp has seemingly been growing under Brood, and this was a competitive affair. Jovin Castaner managed to get his head on that, but couldn't trouble the target with it. Heracles have already managed 51 Eredivisie goals this season, 1 more than in the entirety of their previous campaign last year, and have a club record of 65 in their sights before the summer. Peterson has contributed 11 of them, although the Swedes' strike rate has slowed since the early part of the season. It was kept out by Van Leer, but then had the presence of mind to set up Lerin Duarte, who should have done better when equally well placed, as the home side's pressure went unrewarded at the Pullman Stadium. Duarte was in the mood to make amends as spaces continued to emerge. At the end of a strong run, he was next at least able to call Van Leer into action. The effort was struck with plenty of power, but straight at the on-loan Ajax goalkeeper, who just managed to beat it away as the stalemate continued. That remained the case into the second half, where Duarte continued to be a central figure in the story. He'd scored the winner at the Graafschap last weekend, but was still unable to add a sixth of the season here. Next attempt flashing narrowly wide. This was a second home game of the week for Heracles, who'd suffered a dramatic 4-3 defeat to Willem II here on Tuesday. Brandley Kuvas was amongst the goal scorers in that game and was next to have a go at making the elusive breakthrough. Nak had been threatening only infrequently, but did possess a focal point up front in Mitchell Tvreda. He missed a month of 2019 with an Achilles injury, but is yet to score since the turn of the year after being restored to fitness. And didn't really look like changing that here. New Nak boss Broad is a former Heracles coach who took charge of 50 games for them, so was back on familiar territory, but with little margin for error in his new post. With the game getting stretched, Peterson combined with informed Spaniard Adrian Dalmo, who got in behind the visiting defence, but Anouar Kali was well placed to clear under pressure. Heracles had won 5 of their previous 8 home league games and were still looking the likelier winners of this one. Peterson found plenty of space to meet Joey Koning's cross, but Van Leer wasn't as extended as he might have been. There had never been a draw between these sides in 14 previous Eredivisie meetings in Almelo, though, so when Peterson got another chance in the air shortly afterwards, he made no mistake. Kuvas with the cross this time, a 12th of the season for the Swede, but only his second of 2019. It was worth the wait for Heracles, who'd had to toil hard to break down the basement dwellers, but they had their reward with 9 minutes to play. A big effort was certainly required, but a first clean sheet in 6 saw the job through to leave them sitting inside the top 6 and firmly on course for those playoffs before a testing trip to Feyenoord next up on Saturday. But Ruud Broek's first defeat as NAC Breda boss comes at a former home, and it's one that leaves his new side 5 points adrift at the bottom of the table with 5 games to play. We turn our attention to Sunday's matches now, and with none of their closest relegation rivals winning a day earlier, FC Emmen had the chance to move out of the bottom 3 if they could beat mid-table Heerenveen. It was still a big if, given that Dick Lukian's men had taken just 1 point from their previous 7 matches, losing the last 3, but the incentive for them was clear. The Frisians have had an inconsistent campaign. They had gone 4 away games unbeaten before being thumped 3-0 at Feyenoord on Thursday, and were forced back in the early stages here. Anko Janssen calling Vorne Haan into action. The first 20 minutes really set the tone for what followed, with Heerenveen captain Daniel Hurg calling it painful and said he was unable to recognise his side. Emmen were out to take full advantage, with Janssen doing brilliantly to keep the danger alive and create an opportunity here. With Luciano Slagfair against his former club, who was just unable to finish it off. Another Heerenveen old boy was next to go close as Emmen warmed to their task and looked to be enjoying themselves. Fullback Janet Chavlin linked well with Janssen down the left before fluffing his finish. It was a lesson he would certainly learn from before the game was out. Although that would take a little while. Next, Glenn Byle advanced down the other side. And from his cross, Chavlin was again afforded a sight of goal. He didn't catch that one cleanly either, although the miss-hit effort almost spelt further trouble for Heerenveen, who, according to midfielder Michel Vlap, need to take a long look at themselves in the mirror after this display. They barely threatened the side with the leakiest defence in the division going into the weekend, and the one-way traffic continued as Emmen finally earned their reward. 2 of those that had been heavily involved in their dominance again took centre stage. When Janssen's effort was saved by Haan, Janet Chavlin reacted well to score the goal he'd been threatening, his 3rd of the season. It was quite a moment for the defender against the club he left on a free transfer last summer. We really needed this, was his assessment afterwards. And it only seemed to harden their resolve to push on to the victory, which could prove so important to their survival prospects. Clapp admitted his side was second best and nowhere near as sharp as Emmen. That didn't really change in the second half, even if he was able to at least force the underemployed Kjell Scherpen into a save soon after the restart. Normal order was soon restored in terms of the pattern of proceedings when Emmen pressed to double their lead. Again, both full-backs were involved in attacking areas. The goal-scorer playing his part in the build-up this time. But Bale, a scorer of 5 goals this season, 3 of them in the Cup, couldn't get the better of Hahn, who was by far the busier of the goalkeepers. This was Heerenveen's first visit here since the Dutch Cup win 8 seasons ago, but it won't be one they will want to remember. Held 1-1 at home by the promoted club earlier in the campaign, this was proving even tougher as Emmen fight to prolong their stay in the top flight beyond a single season. They were patient in possession and the side applying most of the pressure going into the closing quarter of an hour. And again, it was Jana Chavlin who reaped the rewards. He ran onto a well-fighted ball by Michael Schakot and left Hahn embarrassed by squeezing it through his legs from the narrowest of angles to make it 2-0. The left-back only ever scored once for Heerenveen in the Eredivisie in 2 years with them, so this was quite a double to come up with, having managed to stay onside. So significant as well in the context of his club's season, but painful viewing for Hahn. First win since February and only a second ever Eredivisie clean sheet for Emmen. Still a joint low this season along with Heerenveen. Jan-Odo Riekerink insists his side can still make the playoffs despite now sitting in the bottom half, but admits they'll need to be much better than this, a day when their opponents just seem to want it more. Feyenoord arrived in Venlo on a run of 7 Eredivisie away games without a win, their longest such sequence since 2011. They looked in the mood to change that with plenty of early pressure. Sam Larsson's effort was straight at Lars Unnestil as VVV struggled to get hold of the ball. They'd suffered 3 home defeats in 4 going into this, one more than in the previous 10 games put together. And at times on Sunday were chasing shadows. Jordi Claessy was next to test Unnestil, who again stood his ground but couldn't release the pressure. The Kuil has never been a happy hunting ground for Feyenoord, though. In fact, remarkably, they'd won only 3 of their 21 away trips to face VVV in the Eredivisie. Their worst such percentage against any club in this league. But having beaten Heerenveen 3-0 on Thursday, the intent was obvious from the outset, even with Robin van Persie still missing because of a calf injury. Also obvious was the home side's relief when their goalkeeper was finally able to gather the ball up at the feet of Cuca Martina and end that series of sustained pressure. There was a setback for Feyenoord in the first half when Ricciano Haps was hurt in a challenge with Moreno Rutten. It was the latest in a series of injury concerns for Haps, and although he bravely tried to run the injury off, it would soon become clear that it wasn't going to be possible. In the meantime, his side went in front in some style thanks to Sam Larsson. The Swede also scored at Utrecht a week earlier. That one came in defeat, but here he was able to reward Feyenoord's strong start with a very smart finish. All whilst his boss Giovanni van Bronckhorst was readying the substitution. This was Larsson's 6th Eredivisie goal of the season, although the opener wasn't necessarily expected to be decisive in a game between these two, with only Ardo dropping more points this season than VVV and Feyenoord after going ahead. On came teenager Tyrell Malacia in place of Haps for a first appearance since December. He too had been suffering with a knee injury. Haps hobbling away, casting a shadow over a very bright start to the afternoon for Van Bronckhorst and Feyenoord. VVV was still reeling from conceding 6 here against Utrecht in midweek and needed something special to steady the ship. In Patrick Houston, they have a player capable of it. Only Vitesse's Martin Ødegaard has scored a greater percentage of his goals from outside the box in the Eredivisie this season. And again, Houston, a goal scorer against his parent club on Thursday, attempted the spectacular. Coach Maurice Stein felt that there was a lack of faith from his side to really hurt Feyenoord and accused them of not fighting hard enough, particularly in the second half. It might have been a different story had they salvaged something just before the break and been able to go in on level terms. Instead, danger man Pini Umlapa, their 11-goal top scorer, couldn't quite convert in front of goal, with Kenneth Vermeer in the way. Perhaps their best chance of an equaliser arrived on the hour and was missed by Houston. The ball had broken kindly for him after J. Roy Grott pressed forward, but the finish was lacking again. It was becoming a recurring theme, the approach play impressive enough, the shooting not quite as sharp. Stein well aware on the bench just how costly that could prove to be. At this stage, though, the game was still very much in the balance. VVV have won as many home matches and scored as many goals against Feyenoord as against any Eredivisie opponent in their history. Traditionally, they thrive on this sort of stage. Had they been able to get a foothold in this game, they may have felt they could go on to achieve another famous result. Opportunities continue to arise, with Malacia having to defend well against Houston to concede only a corner. Mwapa met it. Tony Vilhena cleared away from on the post, and Peter Van Ooyen fired back at Vermeer. Frustration building that VVV just couldn't make the breakthrough. Stein insisting the conviction required was somewhat lacking. There was always a danger that could come back to cost them, and so it proved inside the last 20 minutes. And Broncos described his striker Nikolai Jurgensen as being in a bad mood all day, but if so, he took it out on VVV by making it 2-0 and scoring in successive games, having also been on target against Heerenveen on Thursday. Dane notoriously dislikes playing on artificial surfaces, but denied he was getting particularly angry on Sunday, happy to celebrate instead what was just his 5th league goal of the season, and one which looked likely to secure all 3 points for his side. And that was confirmed in stoppage time thanks to an excellent individual effort from Malacia. Followed a strong run with an emphatic finish to make it 3-0. It was only the second ever Eredivisie goal the fullback has scored, and quite a way to mark his return to first-team action. It was an emotional one as well. He dedicated the goal afterwards to his late grandfather, revealing just what a tough time his family have been through recently, and that although his grandpa can't be at the games anymore, he was sure he'd have seen it. Certainly one to be proud of, and it clinched a second 3-0 win for Feyenoord in the space of 4 days to help them reclaim third place in the table from RZ. First away win since early December was much needed for Feyenoord going into the final few fixtures of Van Bronckhorst's reign before Jaap Stam takes over in Rotterdam. This defeat means VVV have now conceded 54 league goals this season, the same as their total for the whole of the previous campaign. They ended the weekend still 7 points above the bottom 3. To Jaap Stam's current club next, and Pek Zwolle needed to bounce back from a 4-0 thumping at PSV on Thursday when they hosted a Fortuna Sittard side, starting just 2 points behind them. Zwolle new victory here would all but secure survival, a big improvement after a tough first half of the season, and they went in front at the Mac 3 Park Stadion with a little over half an hour played. Yunus Namli made the goal, and Vito van Krooij scored it with a coolly taken finish. His 9th of the Eredivisie season and a 3rd in his last 4 matches. It owed much to the movement of Namli and the timing of his run, before providing the service to match, and Van Krooij did the rest. Since a surprise win at Feyenoord in December, Fortuna haven't picked up another point on their travels, attempting here to avoid a 7th straight league defeat on the road, and the odds were soon to become further stacked against them. Already a goal down, they soon went a man down in the first half for the 3rd match in a row. This time Branislav Ninaj was the offender, guilty of pulling back Mike van Dounen, as referee Dennis Higler reached for his red. The first sending off for the Slovak centre-back's senior career. It was déjà vu for coach Rene Ayer, who was already without Jose Rodriguez, starting a 4-match ban for his red against Ardo in midweek, and with Andrea Balic having also been dismissed at Willem II last weekend. Fortuna becoming the first club since Roda 2 years ago to go down to 10 in 3 successive games. Higler had initially appeared to point to the penalty spot, but after a video review awarded the free kick outside the area, which Namli could only strike against the wall. All eyes then turned to Lisandro Semedo. The Portuguese player had been sacrificed during a substitution immediately after each of the previous two reds, and sure enough, for a third game running, he failed to make it to half-time before being hauled off due to the misdemeanours of others. Alessandro Serrani was his replacement this time. Into the second half, and Fortuna's frustration was growing, feeling all the big decisions were going against them, as no action was taken here against Bram van Polen. And as if to rub salt in the wounds, Zwolle went straight up the other end to double their lead. It owed much to some good work by Van Crooij down the right, and in a role reversal of the first goal, it was Namli who came up with a finish after Van Dounen's effort had been blocked. The fourth of the league season for the Dane, who finished with a flourish. He's now just one short of last year's haul, and it afforded the host vital breathing space against the 10 men. In fact, it left them in complete command as things turned out. Just 3 minutes later, and it was 3-0. Helle Clement was unselfish when bearing down on goal, choosing instead to tee up strike partner Lennart Thij for a tap-in to continue his productive form since signing in January. The German had scored twice in a 3-0 win in Emmen a week earlier, and gratefully accepted this opportunity conjured up by Clement. Already a reversal of the scoreline Pek Zwolle had been on the wrong end of when they lost in Sittard back in November. Equally impressive have been their defensive improvements under Stam. Here they were aiming for a third straight clean sheet at home in the top flight for the first time since the spring of 2004. And it provided a platform to pile on the punishment at the other end. Kingsley Ehezebue did brilliantly forward from fullback to create the opportunity and provide the cross for Van Dounen to make it 4-0 with an hour played. The striker made the header his. The score is 8th Eredivisie goal of the season, but a first for him since the start of February. One gratefully accepted on Sunday. With only 10 points taken in 2019, just Nac Breda have now fared worse than Fortuna since the winter, and they're not safe after this. Just 4 points above the bottom three. Another goal for Thij and another assist for Van Crooij, making it 5-0, with the second half not yet at its midway point, as keeper Alexei Koselev was left completely stranded. It was all too easy for Zwolle. A double for Thij for the second weekend running. 32 goals conceded now by Fortuna in losing those last 7 away league games. As it transpired, that was the end of the scoring as Stam's side cruised through the final quarter. 5-0 it finished. We finished this week's show as we started it with a title contender, and we quite possibly saved the best until last this week in terms of drama. Ajax's impressive win at Willem II a day earlier, when PSV needed all 3 points in Arnhem to return to the top of the table, only for them to fall behind just 13 minutes in. A smartly taken goal from Tulani Serrero. The fine run and measured manner of the finish, making it more surprising that this was his first for almost a year. Ajax had extended their goal difference advantage over the champions to 9 with their display in Tilburg, which is why a point here wouldn't be enough to take PSV back to the summit. They were so close to a swift response, thanks to an impudent effort, or as some argued, an intended cross from Herving Lozano, which almost caught out Remco Pasveer. Half an hour in, and Pasveer nearly turned provider against his former club, having only won back his Vitesse place from Eduardo in midweek. His huge clearance bounced once, before even evading opposite number Jeroen Zoet at the other end. But Brian Linson was narrowly judged offside as he ran through to try and profit. It was a very close call, and one of many decisions from the officials that would create plenty of talking points throughout and after an absorbing contest. The next one was the award of a penalty for PSV just before the break, when Pasveer brought down Lozano in the box. Södergård was the man in the middle and pointed straight to the spot, despite Pasveer's furious protests. He was insistent that Lozano was looking for the penalty to such an extent that he was already on the way down before any contact was made. The keeper, who was yellow carded, was also running a real risk in attempting such a challenge, and no clear and obvious error was spotted by VAR. Despite the stick from the fans, Lozano kept his cool. To convert here and level the scores. In fact, the Mexican seemed to be inspired by the hostile atmosphere as he tucked away his 16th league goal of the season, then celebrated in front of many of those same supporters. PSV were beaten in their last away game at Ajax. Not since 2014 have they lost 2 on the bounce on their travels. Vitesse didn't let heads drop, though, as they responded straight away and kept pressing high up the pitch. That policy looked to have paid off when it appeared they had a penalty of their own, almost straight away. Certainly, referee Gozaboik again pointed to the spot. This time for a high foot by Gaston Pereiro on Matheus Berro, as the frenetic finish to the first half continued. On this occasion, though, a video review was recommended. And after seeing it again on the monitor, Gozaboik went on to change his mind and revoked the penalty award. It was one of a number of decisions that infuriated Vitesse coach Leonid Slutsky, who may face disciplinary action for his scathing assessment of the official afterwards, calling him both arrogant and the worst referee in the world. Pereiro and PSV breathed a big sigh of relief. Into the second half, and only a smart stop from Zoet kept his team on terms and prevented what would have been an own goal. This actually came off Steven Bergwijn, who was back trying to help out his defence at the corner. It was end-to-end stuff, a little too much for the liking of the Champions coach Mark van Bommel, who understandably admitted he'd have much preferred a boring win. PSV had won their last 10 Eredivisie games against Vitesse and swarmed forward again in pursuit of the first of 6 more victories that would guarantee them the title. Brilliant ball from Angelino left PSV in real trouble again, and although Lozano was able to get on the end of it, Chelsea loanee Jake Clark-Salter was there to clear away. Despite an inconsistent campaign at times, Vitesse still started in the Europa League playoff places and were unbeaten at home in 12 Eredivisie games going into this. They pushed on as PSV had a man down in midfield before Martin Ødegaard produced a fine finish to restore their lead just before the hour mark. The Norwegian had attempted more shots than any other player in the Eredivisie so far in 2019, and this one flew in, his 6th goal of the season and a first since February. Both clubs had been cursing the officials throughout, but it certainly seemed as if they got this one right, just as PSV thought they'd restore parity a second time, midway through the second half. Luke de Jong's effort bounced back to Pablo Rosario to score. He did so from an offside position, and that didn't count. A few minutes later, it was 2-2 though. Denzel Dumfries doing brilliantly to tee up a tap-in for de Jong. "25 Eredivisie goals for the season now for the skipper, just one short of his career best. This time the flag stayed down, and de Jong had his first goal against Vitesse since his Twente days back in 2012. Though he's never finished on the losing side against them, winning 13 of the previous 15. This effort renewed hope of another vital victory. Instead, this remarkable contest took another twist when Alexander Bertner's header was saved by Zoet. Former PSV man Tim Matthijs pounced to put the hosts ahead for a third time. It was the Slovenian's first goal since September after returning from a broken leg last month. He'd been on the pitch just 8 minutes. At the other end, it was another of the former PSV contingent who was doing just as much to dent their title prospects, as some heroics from PSV kept the Vitesse lead intact. The veteran keeper certainly justified his recent recall, thwarting Lozano as the frantic finish continued. He promised afterwards he'll try and do his bit to help out the Eindhoven side later in the month, because Vitesse still have to face Ajax as well. He was there again to keep out Dumfries, as PSV threw everything at them going into the final 5 minutes. Dumfries declaring afterwards his side had failed themselves by slipping up in Arnhem, given how many chances they had. But more drama was to follow. Into the last few minutes and through went Lozano. With Michael van der Werf in pursuit, down went Lozano. And out came a straight red card. A penalty as well to PSV. And the chance to restore parity once more. Again, Lozano stepped up to the spot and again beat Pasfair with the penalty, this time only just. Last season's top scorer equalled his 17 goals from that campaign, and PSV were set to leave with a point after all. Van der Werf left distraught, and Vitesse down to 10 men for the 4 added minutes of stoppage time. With the very last attack came the chance to snatch back top spot after all. But Bergwijn didn't make the most of it, and once again Pasfair was in the way as it finally finished in a 3-3 thriller. And Bommel talked of 5 finals still to come, but made only the briefest of appearances at the press conference afterwards. His side's lead over Ajax lost in the last few weeks. Now only goal difference separates the sides, and that is in Ajax's favour, 74 to 65. It's the tightest of title races. So make sure you join us next week for the latest Eredivisie review, with the season heading for its final straight.